So this observation feedback, let me explain the process. I'm going to start by getting you to talk first, to share with me your thoughts and feelings about the class, okay? And then I might have 1 or 2 questions. After you've shared your thoughts and feelings about your class lesson, I will then read you my notes and go over some points, some areas where I think you can improve. And okay? How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Okay, so to start, Peter, how was that lesson for you? Was that your best lesson?
No, it's, to be honest, I feel it's so bad.
Really?
Yeah, because first I was thinking to do some activity, but later on I just somehow I decided to change a little bit, because I feel like someone is observing me, so I should talk much rather than, do the activity. But after I finished, I realized that my students are not that really into this class. So not everyone is active in the class. There are few students. There are 2 boys. They were laughing the whole class, and I tried to stop, but it doesn't work very well. Also, I think there's less PBL, very less. And
PBL, explain.
Play-based learning, and about the 21st century teaching skills, I didn't use much. Also, for those ELL students, I think I did something for them. Like the group was organized before I started the class, and I have find a leader for each group, and those leaders were good in English, so they are gifted students, so they can help for every group, even for those students who are struggling in studying. So I think that's the thing I did good. Right, I just feel I talk too much. I should let the student to share their ideas and talk more than me. And the active is not that really fun. That's it.
So, if you had, so in a simple way, if you had a second opportunity at that lesson again, what would be the 2 or 3 key things you would change or do differently to have a better impact?
For the same lesson?
Oh yeah, if you had another opportunity to teach the lesson.
Yes, I have talked with my my colleague. And what I was thinking, if next time I would do the same class, then I will change the activity. So I will first give the 4 group, there were 7 characteristics of living things. So I will first give 4 characters and let the 4 group to define by themselves. So once they finish give the definition, I will let them come and share and do the presentation. And the rest of the 3, I can find some volunteer to do it for me, or if there's no volunteer, I will just do it by myself. Yeah, that's what I think to change about the activity, rather than I talk alone again and again.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so what just happened now is I asked you to give me some feedback regarding the lesson that I observed, and you told me how it was from your point of view. You told me about things that you planned and things you had to change. You've also mentioned if you had another opportunity, how you would change it. Okay, which is good. Like I said earlier, I will let you talk first. Maybe I have some questions, and then after I will read you my notes and we'll go over it. Okay? So now that you have spoken, I'm going to read you my notes. So this is notes that I was making. Okay, so you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I start by saying, rings bell, everyone sits down, and within 2 minutes, everyone does sit down. This is what was established at the beginning of the class. At the same beginning of the class, the PPT is ready with the lesson displayed. You start with a review check and you say, are you ready? Say yes, is what you said. You transition into multiple choice questions, where you started off by saying, Dora, give me the answer, but no thinking time was given to Dora, but she gave an answer. So you said, give me the answer, and you expected the answer on the spot with no thinking time. So your second multiple choice question you gave, I think option 1 was the correct answer for question number 2 in your multiple choice question. Then you moved into question number 3, where you said to everyone, raise your hand if you know the answer. I believe that the answer was B. peregrinus. From there, you transitioned into. So I think that it was about after 5 minutes, the class is really settled and they are actually ready to learn off the back of your multiple choice questions. Then I state that the teacher goes over the learning objective, where you state 15 seconds to move to group seats, you said. And what I noticed by that is clear routines have been set and established, and all students were able to move into their group seats. And that can only have been done if they have practiced or done it before. They can't just know by themselves, so it was good to see those routines. I then note that 4 groups of mixed numbers in each group was made. So it was slightly off balance, and that could be addressed in terms of like making each group of equal numbers. So instead of having 4 groups, maybe 5 groups or so. So I noticed on the board you had group A and B common characteristics as a Venn diagram, and you stated, is that clear? Yes. And it's good that you're trying to like make sure that the kids are up to pace, up to speed with what you're doing. It goes on to say each group has a leader. One student responds with yes. That simply means when you said, is that clear? Yes. Only one student says yes. Nobody else said yes. But this is a class of 20 plus almost 20 students, but only one person acknowledged that they understand. Now, I go on and say, class is mainly spoken in English with instances of students speaking Chinese, and the teacher also reinforces subject knowledge in Chinese. As activity draws close to an end, the teacher reminds the class by saying, 1 more minute. For that point, I noted that maybe a visual timer, like a countdown timer, would help with timing, pacing, and transitioning for you and for the students. Class groups shown on the PPT. So you have a PPT slide, and on the slide there was 4 bubbles, and inside the bubbles were the names of the students that belonged to the group in those bubbles. So I said that class groups shown on the PPT, perhaps a group name and or number could help when choosing groups to answer and share with the class, as there was an issue with Kevin being in the wrong group. Okay. Now, so that meant that like on the same slide you can edit it to say group 1, call it group 1, then group 2, group 3, group 4, or group A, B, C, D, or group blue, group red, group yellow, group black, and say stand up if you're in group black, and everyone stands up, and straight away someone will notice that, hold on, I'm in the wrong group. So that way you can, when they have a group name and or a group number, you can just say who's in group A, who's in group B, and you can just let them tell you in stages. So that way it's easy to pick up people like Kevin that are in the wrong group. But as sign of a good teacher, you didn't waste time dwelling on Kevin being in the wrong group. You actually just continued. You acknowledged that he's in the wrong group, and you just continued with the lesson, which is good. The sharing activity could have been improved with things like post-it notes or a big A3 sheet of paper for each of the groups to jot down their own group ideas. Either the post-it notes or the big A3 sheet of paper would have been good, because as I note here, either ideas would have made it easier for the whole class to share what they have similar and what they have different with one another, and they could explore the why behind it. So if you're giving each group 4 or 5 minutes to jot down on their own group paper or post-it notes. If it's post-it notes, then you can get everybody at the end of the 5 minutes to take the post-it note off and stick it in on the whiteboard, but not just stick it on the whiteboard. The whiteboard will have circles that represents different things, and they can then stick it in the place that they think is right, and then you can explore their answers. The same with the big A3 sheet. The leader could have had more of a role in directing what to do, and then someone in the group would have had the role of writer to write down everybody's ideas. The leader's job would have been to make sure everybody gives an idea and tell the writer to make sure he writes everybody's idea. So what you're trying to do with activities is make as many students involved in the activity as possible, not that it's just a small group that's involved. Okay, for example, only the group leaders and the people answering the question were involved. So if you're not a group leader and you're not answering the question, you're not involved. So that's a big group of your class that's not involved in the activity. So I noted here that either the idea of the post-it note or the A3 sheet of paper would have made it easier for the class to share what they have similar and what they have different with one another and explore the whys. So that can be a deeper thinking. So group 4, otherwise known as the group at the back corner closest to the exit door, is consistently talking while the teacher is talking. The teacher is yet to notice the low-level disruption and the disengagement by the 2 girls, not boys, the 2 girls in the group. So from that point, you are actually transitioning to characteristics of living things. To engage the students more in an alternative strategy could have been to make the whole class stand and sit based on the correct answer. So you would have played a whole class game of stand up, sit down. So characteristics of living things, you can show characteristics, agree, disagree, stand up, sit down, and they'll all be standing up, sitting down, and you can see visually with your eyes that people are standing up, sitting down. And also you can see visually with your eyes, if somebody is not standing up or sitting down, you can quickly know if they are engaged or not engaged, if they're misbehaving, not misbehaving, if they are participating, not participating. That is one of the examples you could use at that point. I also added that another one is students could navigate to one of the 4 corners of the classroom that would have represented a different idea or answer. So instead of stand up, sit down, another way to engage most of the class is every corner in your class represents an answer or an idea about characteristics of living things. So you can then have a question in your PPT slide, tell them to choose one of the corners which represents something, and you can visually let them now move around And it will be interesting. Some will know the answer and go to the right corner. Some will be guessing. Some will just follow other people. But you will visually see who's engaged, who's not, and you can now get involved and address, why did you choose this? What's going on? So I move on to say, by doing either of these strategies that I'm sharing with you, more students would have felt more involved, and the teacher would have been able to question the class choices further. Now, the group in the back corner are still disengaged at this point and are beginning to distract others around them. So now it's gone from the girls to the boys. So this is where I now state that the teacher has now noticed the students are off track and is addressing the behavior by saying, "Is there something funny you want to share with us?" Then followed by, "I will be checking your notes after class." Now, interestingly, you didn't check any notes after class, but you said it. So when you say things, you need to mean it, and the students need to know you say what you mean because you mean what you say. So when you say things and you don't follow through, they know either not to trust your words or know that you're not being serious, that they can continue their bad behavior. Now, this is interesting because the point you have got involved is the point where you notice the boys have been affected by the girls. So you're thinking it's the boys when really it's actually the girls. Now, you don't know it's the girls because when you ask the question to the girl, one of the girls, she always managed to answer the question. This is because she's actually smart. She's actually has the ability to answer the question, but she's still disengaged because she's not interested, she's not engaged, or the level of the lesson is not pitched to her level. Maybe the level of the lesson is pitched too high for her, or the level of the lesson is pitched too low for her. Either high or low, if it's not pitched right, you always get students disengaged and doing bad behavior, silly behavior, destructive behavior. Do you understand my meaning?
Yeah.
So you have to. So this is why having activities that involve the class is always helpful for students as well as the teacher to identify is the students involved. Moving forward, the anagram, Miss Gren. Now, this anagram, Miss Gren, should have been created as a handout and given to each student, either completely filled or it needs to be filled during the class lesson. Now, if it's filled, then you have guaranteed that every single student has, the answer, the solution, the formula. They can just stick it in the book. Or if it needs to be filled, then you can do activities in the class with the whole class where they can fill every letter, M, R, S, G, R, E, N. For example, Group 1, they will focus on the M and R. Group 2 will focus on S and G. Group 3 will focus on R and E. And Group 4 will focus on N. Meaning they will have the explanation, definition with an example. Explanation, definition with an example. They will have that. Now, but that means every group has something missing. Now, what you can then do is carousel, means that one member in every group will stand up as the leader and go to the next group to teach them their missing letter. You understand my meaning?
Yeah.
So, if I know M and R, I know every other group don't know M and R. Now, either the teacher chose me, or I'm the leader, or my group chose me. I'll be the one to go to the next group and teach them M and R. And then as I'm teaching them, they are noting it down because there's a timer because that's what's missing. So then you can see that the students are engaging with each other. That's another strategy. So moving forward, question about movement from student. Answered by the teacher, yes, it can be counted as movement. Okay, so a student asks a question about, can this be considered movement? And you confirm that yes, this can be considered as movement. I think it might be to do with plants or something, I'm not sure. Now, the same student seems to answer and ask all the questions. So the same group of students are always the one that answers the question, and those same group of students are also the ones that ask the question. What does that mean? You have 3 or 4 students you always pick to answer questions, and those same 3 or 4 students are always asking questions. What does that tell me? It tells me that those 3 or 4 students are involved, are engaged, but what about everybody else? Okay, this is where you need to do things like think, pair, share, and get them to communicate with each other, and then share as a group with class. So I say, so because of the way you've done it, high engagement is shown by a few students. Now, I go on to say here, let me go down. Teacher reinforced their explanation by using a Chinese chengyu, so a Chinese idiom, and students understood the idea of eat, sleep, and go to toilet. So you used, you understand my meaning when I say a Chinese chengyu? Yeah. So when you said the chengyu, they all understood your meaning.
You mean the metabolism?
Hmm?
The metabolism?
I think
That
so.
I translate.
Yeah, you said something Chinese, like 4 words in Chinese,
Yeah.
which is a Chinese chengyu, and they were like, okay, they understand about eat, sleep, and go to toilet. Going through the anagram so this anagram, when you're going through it one by one, it's proving time consuming, and only the most able students remain engaged. So those same 3-4 students were very, very engaged as you were going through each letter yourself one by one with the whole class. Okay, but not everyone in the whole class. You can't confirm at this moment in time that every single person or most of the class wrote down everything. You can't, because you didn't check everyone's books or everyone's notes. You can only hope, you can only think, you can only feel that they did. But there's no way you would know unless they give you their books. So this is why I say, if you give them a handout with everything completed, then you know. Or if you give them a handout with some of the letters completed and everything is missing, means that they have to now go and find it. That's another way you know, because you see them sharing and writing it. Do you know? So there needs to be less work from you, more work from the students.
Yeah.
I repeat, less work from you, more work from the students. So let's continue. So alternatively, as I've said this already, alternatively a carousel could have been used, or a presentation by each group on some of the letters in the anagram for the class to take notes. So students teaching students instead of the teacher teaching students. How to define growth. Teacher chose one of the destructive students to answer the question. So this is when he chose the girl. Teacher asked another of the disruptive students to help answer the question. So what happens is, you chose the boy. The boy didn't know the answer about how to define growth. He was, and then the girl helped him. Now this is the girl that was the source of all the problems. But because she's quite intelligent, quite smart, she's able to answer the question, and it looks like she's not creating any problems. But I'm sitting back watching everything from the beginning to the end, so I can see the whole story. So I wrote here. So another thing you said, who would like to explain excretion? Same group of students offered their answer, and the rest of the class observed the interaction. So when you go, who wants to answer this question? Who knows this? Who thinks they know that? It's always going to be the same people putting their hands up. It's always the same 3-4 students. Given an open question, you get the same people always trying their best to answer, but everybody else is just waiting for the answer. You can choose randomly, make people work in pairs, make people work in groups, and share as a pair, share as a group. Less work from you, more work from the students. So move on. Every living organism needs nutrition. How do plants get food? After the student answered, half the class said photosynthesis. Okay, that was nice to see. Teacher said, I hope everyone wrote that down. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. The summary. Teacher chooses a random student to answer a series of questions. And each time when the student was answering the series of questions, you said, right, great. But I wrote, how? Why? How is it right? How is it great? So this is like the student's answering you, but if I'm also a student in the class as well, how is that the right answer? How is that a good answer? Why is that great? I'm thinking, what is the student doing that I can learn from, that I can copy as another student, so I can also be right, great? Because the teacher's saying right, great, but is not breaking it down for everyone else to understand, unless you've already trained them on what makes something right, what makes something great. Now, not all or most students wrote down the entire, so I said this to you already, not all or most students wrote down the entire anagram. Some was written down. Teacher asked a summary question to the disruptive group, so that group table, 2 boys, 2 girls, but it was a challenge as they did not engage. So they won't answer. This is towards the end. So you're trying to deal with their behavior by asking them questions to do with the class. And because they weren't listening, because they weren't paying attention, they couldn't even answer your question. It was interesting. So you were dealing with their behavior by saying, okay, you asked them some sort of question, and they were looking, and not even the smart girl was able to really answer the question. And that was interesting. Now, during when that happened is when the bell went off. The bell rang to show end of class, change of class. So during mid-sentence, class stopped abruptly. So that means you didn't fully get to complete your summary. And because the class stopped abruptly, you didn't get a chance to do your exit strategy either, because you were trying to deal with the behavior. And this is fine. This is normal. This is teaching. Based on your own opinion, you have a whole class of boys and girls. You know, how many? Like 20? 19. A full class of 19 students, boys and girls, and 1 teacher. So one side is a teacher, the other side is 19 students. So how would you weigh the talk time? Meaning the students' talk time versus the teacher's talk time. Is it equally balanced, or one is higher or lower than the other? You know, what would you say?
Should be teacher talk less and the student talk
No,
more?
well, I agree. But if you think back in your class, your lesson, that one yesterday, what would you say?
I said it was so, like, it's always me who is talking, and they're not talking or discussing, just like they're not engaged.
Okay, so let me tell you from my point, and I agree with you, and I'll tell you from my point of view. Classes like that, lessons like that is excellent for the teacher, brilliant for the teacher. Why? Because the teacher is showing that they have very good, high-level subject knowledge. Because the teacher is the one that's talking. It's just the teacher. You hear the teacher the most. The teacher has all the answers and knows everything. So I'm sitting there watching the teacher enjoy themselves because they're so smart. Well done to the teacher. But there's 19 other students that's not having that same experience because they're not talking and engaging in the same way. So I wrote here, high teacher talk time with 2 or 3 students answering and asking the questions. Passive engagement from the rest of the class with the small group at the back continually disrupting their own learning because they're not focused. So group at the back is off track, and I said here, teacher talk time was higher than the class. It was 70% teacher, and in fact it's 75% teacher and 25% student. So that means it was a lesson about the teacher, not a lesson about the students. You understand my meaning?
I understand.
So some of the ideas and examples I gave you many different ideas and examples.
Yes.
Will shift it away from the teacher and focus it more on the student. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's all my notes. Okay. Is there anything you are not sure about that I said, or you disagree with, or maybe I got it wrong or something in my notes?
No, I think it's completely, correct.
Now, based on my notes, is there any food for thought, meaning anything interesting, anything you will think about, anything you will take away and try and work on for next time?
Yes, I remember that you share some ideas of how to make students to engaged, like to give them the stickies and ask the leader to make sure every members in their group write down at least one ideas and collect and stick on the whiteboard. Another one is they can stand up and sit to, like, teacher gives some question, so the student can stand and stop sorry. And another one is because there's 4 corners, so what I understand is I can give them 4 options for them to choose, so that they can walk to the different corner and pick the correct answer.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's correct or wrong.
Oh yeah, pick their
because you have
own
to
answer.
you have to ask them why.
Right.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah. And summary was not clear, so I should give some clear question, like multiple choice or something, and make it as a activity, like that.
Yeah. Your start was stronger than your finish. So remember at the start I talked about your intro, your multiple choice questions, and that was a stronger start than your finish. And I think it's because the destructive group, in particular the 2 girls, hindered the way you wanted to finish the class, because you at that time is when you wanted to address their behavior head on. My recommendation to you would be, when you notice that a student or a group of students are not working well or working good together or working the way you want, you have the right as a teacher to do what you did, which is question them, to get them back on track. Like, tell them to get back on track, then question them if they're still not getting back on track. But of course, you have the power to move them. You have the power. So for example, there's 2 ways you can move them. One is you choose one of them to stand at the front or stand outside to relax, calm down, and when they feel like they're ready to learn, they can come back in and just sit down quietly. So by doing that, it sends a message to everybody that you don't want anyone to stay in the classroom. It's going to slow down, disrupt the learning. When you tell them to go to the corner, relax a little bit, or go outside and relax and come back when you're ready to learn. That's one way you can move them. Another way you can move them is put them in another group. Move them away from each other. That's another way you could address that problem, And a third way, if need be, you put them in a group in the middle or the front of the class by themselves. Move them by themselves when they've got no one to talk to. No one left, no one right to talk to. You have power as a teacher, so you need to utilize and exercise it. Do you understand my meaning?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. So yeah, that's everything. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.